We are close and personal today because we're going to talk about the terms loft and lie in relation to your golf clubs. Now this area can get quite technical, but it's really handy to have a basic understanding of it. So here we go. And first of all, let's talk loft. And when you are, say, standing over your golf ball with the club behind it at address, you'll notice when looking down that some clubs have very little loft and other clubs have lots of loft. If I take, for instance, my driver here and put it down behind the ball, you see that it has a very low angle. It only has about 9 degrees of loft. It's my least lofted club. It hits the ball the lowest of all my clubs. And if I do the same thing with my wedge here, looking down at address, now you'll see how the line extends out towards the sky. It has the most loft of any club in my bag. 60 degrees of it, in fact, and this one will hit the ball the highest in the air and go the shortest distance. So as we go from the longest club in my bag, the driver, to the shortest, this wedge, the lofts progressively increase and the ball will go higher in the air. Now the loft of a golf club also has an effect on how much spin is put on the ball when it's hit, and that is something that golf club manufacturers are constantly battling with to try to get right. Now, a ball that doesn't have a lot of spin when it comes off the club face, say with a driver, will go further, but it can be hard to control as it cuts through the air. And when it lands, it'll tend to scoot forward. And a ball with loads of spin, say with a wedge, will generally climb up in the air, and when it lands, it will spin to a stop very quickly. So loft and spin are inextricably linked, and it's a balancing act to get that right. Now, how can there be a problem with lofts on your golf clubs? Well, it's important to remember, especially in your irons, that they are essentially lumps of metal. Some are very soft metal, and with constant use, the lofts can actually change. So if you go to the range fairly often and you wallop your irons repeatedly off the mat, you could potentially hammer the loft of your 7-iron like this into that of a 6-iron, and then you'd pretty much have 2 clubs in the bag that go the same distance. Now most iron sets actually have about 4 degrees difference of loft between club, and if, say, the loft of just one of your clubs was out by 2 degrees, it could mean that that club hits the ball up to 8 yards longer or shorter. And that all important balance between loft and spin will also be affected. And that changes the trajectory and the stability of the golf ball through the air and what it does again on landing. Now tour pros, they will have their lofts checked very regularly. They're so good that they'll immediately know just on hitting balls on the range if their lofts are the slightest bit off. They're that good. Now for us amateurs, it's a bit more difficult to notice, but again, your local PGA pro will be able to do a check and adjustment of your lofts in just minutes. Now moving on to lie angle, and this is a little bit different in that it's something that you need to get right from the very moment that you get your golf clubs. Now if you look at this iron here, the lie angle is the angle the shaft makes with the ground when the center of the sole is touching the ground. But in layman's terms, the lie angle is basically the steering wheel of your club, and it can be quickly checked by looking at the grooves on the club. If they're pretty much parallel to the ground at address and impact, the club, well, it's in the correct place to hit straight and consistent shots with the right trajectory. But what can be wrong with your lie angle? Well, just imagine an NBA basketball player is holding a normal iron. He's so tall that when he addresses the ball and swings the club might look like this. The grooves, look, they're not parallel to the ground anymore, and the toe is in contact with the ground when he hits. His lie angle is said to be too flat, and the ball will tend to squirt off to the right when he hits it. And then imagine a little kid hitting his dad's irons. The clubs are way too long for him. The heel of the club will be touching the ground. The toe of the club will be sticking up in the air. Again, the grooves here, they're not parallel to the ground anymore. and the lie angle here is said to be too upright, and the tendency will be to hit a shot that sends the ball off to the left. Now, a handy way to check your lie angle on the range is to basically check your divots. If they're nice and square, the lie angle is good, and if they're not, it's a good idea to have your lie angle checked. Again, your pro will be able to do this for you. They'll get you hitting some shots by putting some impact tape on your club head and using a testing board to figure out your lie angle. Now, the lie angle of most modern irons can be adjusted or bent by a couple of degrees with very little difficulty by your pro. Forged irons, they are super easy to adjust as they are softer. Now, the same bending techniques cannot really be used for modern woods because they're just way too fragile and they get damaged if you try and bend them. But most of them now have loads of adjustability in the heads where you can improve the lie angle to suit yourself in just seconds. So there you have a very simple explanation of loft and lie. It's a good idea to have your irons checked once a year, especially so if you hit lots of shots off a range mat or if you used forged metal clubs. Now, if you enjoy this video, please do press like and subscribe to the Golf Bidder YouTube channel. And of course, follow us across Facebook, Twitter and Instagram on Golf Bidder to stay up to date with the very latest news and reviews. For me for now though, it's Donal, out.